June 4, 1942. The sun had just begun to rise over the small, windswept atoll of Midway in the North Pacific. The sea glistened, deceptively calm, but the tension in the air was palpable, thick enough to taste. From the deck of the USS Enterprise, Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey squinted against the early morning glare, scanning the horizon with his binoculars. Somewhere out there, concealed by the vastness of the ocean, was an enemy that had seemed invincible for 6 long months. Smoke still trailed from the direction of the Japanese carriers reported days earlier. But the real danger loomed unseen, thousands of feet above the water. On board the USS Hornet, another American carrier, Ensign George Gay tightened his flight harness, his heart hammering against his ribs. Below him, the flight deck was a whirlwind of controlled chaos. Sailors hustled with urgent precision. Fuel lines hissed. Deck crews shouted over the roar of engines, and the sharp, distinct scent of aviation gasoline filled the air. Every man knew the stakes. The Imperial Japanese Navy had dominated the Pacific since Pearl Harbor, and Midway was the first real chance to strike back, to change the course of the war. High above the waves, the flight deck of the Japanese carrier Hiryu was a similar flurry of calculated activity. Captain Takeshi Koyanagi barked orders as dive bombers and torpedo planes were armed and prepared for another strike. The crews worked with a mechanical rhythm, every action drilled into them through months of relentless training. There was no sense of easy triumph, no arrogance, just the grim focus of men who understood that a single mistake could cost them not just the battle, but their lives. Beneath the ocean's surface, a different kind of tension unfolded. The American submarine USS Nautilus, patrolling near the island, adjusted its periscope depth. Its crews strained to catch the faintest sign of enemy movement through the narrow lens. For the men inside these steel hulls, the ocean was both a shield and a prison, every second stretched into an eternity, each sonar ping carrying the weight of potential doom or a fleeting opportunity. They were the unseen hunters, waiting patiently in the dark. Back on Midway's fragile airstrips, the first American scout planes roared to life, their engines screaming against the dawn. Many of these pilots were barely out of flight school, their youth a stark contrast to the deadly mission ahead. Lieutenant Commander Lofton Henderson led his squadron of Douglas SBD Dauntless dive bombers into the vast blue expanse, a tight formation that cut through the morning mist like silver arrows. Below them, the ocean mirrored the morning sky, a canvas of serene blue that hid the treacherous currents of war. In the Japanese fleet, the architect of the attack on Pearl Harbor, Admiral Isoroku Yamamoto, surveyed his vast armada from the bridge of his flagship, the super battleship Yamato. His eyes were sharp, calculating, yet there was an unspoken tension in his posture. Intelligence had hinted at American forces in the region, but the details remained frustratingly vague. He had planned this operation as a decisive blow, a trap to lure out and destroy the remnants of the U.S. Pacific Fleet. But now, a seed of doubt had been planted. Every decision, every maneuver, could tip the balance in a battle that would determine the Pacific's future. He had rolled the dice, and now he had to wait for them to land. Miles away, in a dimly lit operations room on Midway, a very different kind of admiral was also waiting. Admiral Chester W. Nimitz, commander of the U.S. Pacific Fleet, maintained a calm exterior that belied the storm about to unfold. On the tables before him, maps and charts were spread out, covered with pins and markers representing ships, planes, and predicted movements. A stunning intelligence breakthrough in the previous weeks, the cracking of Japanese naval codes, had given Nimitz the rare and precious gift of foresight. He knew the Japanese were coming. He knew Midway was the target. He knew he was outnumbered and outgunned. But he also knew the enemy's plan. The trap set for Midway was now a trap for the trappers. But knowing the plan was one thing. Executing a counterattack would require flawless courage and more than a little luck. The first clash was now just minutes away. In the cramped cockpit of his Dauntless dive bomber, Lieutenant Dick Best adjusted his goggles, feeling the powerful vibrations of the engine through the controls. He was one of the Navy's best, a man born to fly. Below him, the carriers of the Japanese fleet, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, and Hiryu, seemed impossibly distant and invincible, the heart of an empire's naval power. But as he peered through the haze, he could see them. And he could see the enemy planes beginning their ascent, their silhouettes against the rising sun like dark birds of prey. Every breath he took was measured, every heartbeat synchronized with the rhythm of impending war. This was the moment they had all trained for, the moment that would define their lives. And then, it began. The serene morning was shattered. Smoke, fire, and the deafening roar of engines and anti-aircraft guns ripped through the air. The Battle of Midway had erupted, a sudden and violent storm that would, in the space of a few short hours, change the world forever. The fate of two mighty navies, and the future of the Pacific War, would be decided right here, in the skies and on the seas around this tiny, isolated atoll. June 4th, 1942. The mid-morning sun hangs over the vast Pacific, but the tranquility is shattered. A chaotic symphony of roaring engines, exploding shells, and frantic shouts fills the air. This is the Battle of Midway, and the fate of the war in the Pacific is being decided in these very moments. Plumes of black smoke rise from the fleets of both nations, painting a grim picture against the blue sky. From the decks of the American carriers USS Enterprise and USS Yorktown, dive bombers streak towards the Japanese fleet, their pilots laser-focused on a singular, critical mission. Lieutenant Commander Wade McCluskey grips the controls of his SBD Dauntless dive bomber. His eyes are fixed on the Japanese carrier Akagi far below. As he pushes his aircraft into a steep dive, the world becomes a blur of speed and noise. Deadly fireworks of anti-aircraft flak erupt around him, puffs of black smoke marking near misses. Down on the Akagi's flight deck, it's sheer panic. Japanese sailors scramble for cover as the American planes descend like angry hornets. McCluskey's bomb, and those of his squadron find their mark. They rip through the flight deck, igniting fuel lines and stored torpedoes in a catastrophic chain reaction. Captain Takeshi Koyanagi's orders are lost in the deafening roar of explosions. Sailors dive for cover, but there is no escape as fire consumes the mighty carrier with terrifying speed. The thick, suffocating smell of burning gasoline and cordite fills the air, a grim testament to the unfolding destruction. At the same time, the battle rages from the opposite perspective. On the USS Yorktown, Ensign George Gay has just taken off. The adrenaline of launching from a carrier deck is still coursing through him when the ship's alarms blare to life. Japanese dive bombers are incoming. Gay and his wingmen twist and bank their planes in tight, desperate formations, dodging a hailstorm of tracers and falling debris from exploding aircraft. Bullets shred the air around them, a constant, terrifying reminder that a single misstep, a moment's hesitation, means a fiery death. Below them, the decks of the American carriers are a scene of organized chaos. Men move like a well-oiled machine, rearming and refueling planes, patching up damage, and sending pilots right back into the fray. Every man, from the deckhands to the pilots, understands the stakes. In this inferno, one pilot becomes a focal point of American resolve. Lieutenant Dick Best. Leading his division of dive bombers, he scans the ocean for a target. His eyes lock onto the Hiryu, the last of the four main Japanese carriers still operational. Its flight deck is a perfect target, its planes lined up, vulnerable and exposed. Best begins his dive, a gut-wrenching descent toward the enemy. He times his release perfectly. The bomb arcs down and strikes the carrier with devastating force. The explosion is catastrophic. Torpedo planes parked on the deck erupt in a secondary blast, and the entire carrier shudders violently from the impact. A massive column of smoke and debris shoots into the sky, raining down on the surrounding Japanese fleet and sending sailors scrambling for life rafts in the churning, oil-slicked water. Every second of this battle feels stretched into an eternity. Each heartbeat seems to echo the roar of gunfire and the scream of diving planes. The chaos is mirrored across the vast expanse of the ocean. Torpedo planes from the Japanese fleet, the dreaded Kates, swoop in low and fast, aiming for the vulnerable hulls of the American carriers. The USS Hornet and USS Enterprise brace for the onslaught. Their anti-aircraft gunners fire relentlessly, filling the sky with a deadly curtain of steel. The ships rock violently as near misses send towering plumes of water crashing over the decks, drenching sailors who are already soaked in sweat and fear.